Sam Duong-Woloszynski has been one of our award-winning speakers at Product Camp for multiple years. We are thrilled to have her back, and she reached out and said she had some ideas to help people, help inspire people, and to create some great Product Camp sessions. And the reality is these sessions are great. Creating a product camp session is great to build your network, to share what you've learned, to really support and be a part of the community. But even more, you can use these same techniques to build a session that might work at your user conference or an industry conference. And this is a great way to elevate your own personal leadership. So we wanted to put this workshop on, and normally our workshops are for a fee if you're not a member of Product Coffee, but we decided to make this one open fully to the community and really get this one out there to help people level up their careers. So we are thrilled that you could all be here. We'll encourage you to turn on your cameras as much as possible, participate here today, be a part of it, not just a bystander. And I'm going to hand it over now and give a big welcome to Sam. Sam, welcome, and the show is yours. Take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, I'm so excited for everyone to be here. And we have a handful of amazing past session presenters in the room today that are going to give us their best tips on how to prep. We did another session a couple weeks ago about thinking of topics. So if you have a topic that you're trying to think about how to put a session together, it'd be great to bring that today. You can also pick random practice topics if you like. One thing I just want to say is that Product Camp has been, for me personally, a huge opportunity to grow my career, grow my network. Everyone else in the room here are people that I've met through Product Camp, that I've built relationships with, that have helped me, outside of Product Camp, talk through career things, and people that really inspire me. And I know it can be very intimidating sometimes to put yourself out there and get up on that stage, but I want to encourage us to open up the possibilities for ourselves and remember a couple things, which is one, even just pitching, if you don't actually present a session, even just pitching lets people know what you're interested in and can spark lots of great conversations throughout the rest of the conference because people will recognize you and they'll say, oh, I want to talk to that person about that topic. And two is if you actually get to run a session, it's a really wonderful opportunity to give back into the community what you've learned and help people know what you have to offer. With that, we're going to cover 4 topics today about different pieces of the puzzle of what you might put together for your session. One is going to be talks with Zoe. Like if you want to do a sort of classic TED Talk style kind of storytelling type of talk, we're going to cover that. Then we're going to talk about panels. So if you want to put together a panel with a number of other people, what does it take? How do you do it? How do you create an interesting panel? Then we're going to talk about pitching. Pitching is obviously the first part of Product Camp. So a big important piece of the puzzle is how do you try and sell the story that you want to tell to people and what you're offering in the session. And then finally, we're going to do interactive workshops. So if you want to do something a little more hands-on, skill building, we'll be covering that too. So those are our 4 topics for today. We have Zoe, Toby, and Alex are going to be taking us through, and I'll finish with the last one. And that's our lineup. So with that, I'll hand it over to Zoe to kick us off.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I hope everybody has had lots of coffee today or whatever caffeine of your choice. Sometimes it's an energy drink for me. But hi, my name is Zoe. I haven't been to Product Camp in a while, but it is like the best experience if this is your first time going this year. So I'm very jealous. But yeah, I'm here to talk to you guys about giving a talk, which is like the most meta thing, but we're going to just do it. So just a little bit about me. I am a trained design researcher and strategist, but I prefer being called, oh, not the balloons. I prefer to be called a people nerd. A little bit else about me. I'm a professional dancer. So like dancing with music artists, film, TV, all of that kind of stuff. Love being creative. I'm a cat mom, which means I might get interrupted today. A wannabe baker and addicted to TikTok. I have to admit it. I'm chronically online. But yeah, my professional experience is with engineering psychology. That's what I got my master's in from Georgia Tech, which just means I really like to uncover how people use and interact with technology. But the most important thing to me is my why, right? That's why we do anything. So I've always been motivated by learning about other people's experiences and just understanding different perspectives. And I think building empathy and helping other people build empathy is my superpower and why I love research so much. Yeah, but that's enough about me. Let's get into why you all are here. So, we're going to really break down the different foundational elements of putting together your talk. So we'll start with the bones of your story, how to keep people from falling asleep or getting on their phone, checking their emails, whatever distraction. We're going to put some lipstick on it, give it a little pizzazz, Salt Bay moment. We'll have a moment for a Q&A, and then it'll be your turn. So we'll do an exercise to help you build out the skeleton. So let's just start with some of the challenges, right? We have all been here. So if you've had way too much information and you're like, how am I supposed to condense this to only be a 10-minute talk? When everything feels so important, how do you narrow it down? You have a hard time getting people interested in your topic. Maybe it's super niche or it's just inherently not the most exciting thing, but like you have to bring that excitement. You feel like your talks are boring and you want to make them more entertaining. Like you want to have the viral TED Talk moment. We'll get into that. Or maybe you just haven't given a talk in a long time and the idea of standing in front of a bunch of people is intimidating. Even if you've given lots of talks, it can still be intimidating. And then last, just knowing how to use storytelling to get your message to stick. So these are all challenges. If you have faced all of them or none of them, you're in company. Okay, so let's get into the bones of your talk. For me, there's really three things that I think about before I go into creating any kind of presentation or, yeah. And I'm not talking about the skeletons in your closet, but these are the three questions that I ask as I'm like developing my outline. So the first is always going to be, what is my why? Like I said, if we don't have a why, then we don't have a purpose and we're not going to be as motivated. And that's going to come through, especially when you're talking in front of a bunch of people. So the first thing you want to ask is, why is it important? And we'll dig into each of these more too. The second is, who are you sharing with? It's so important to know who is in your audience, whether it's at a conference, whether it's with other stakeholders or your peers. Just knowing where they're coming from is going to inform how you structure your talk. And then last is, how does it impact your audience? So the so what, why does it matter to them? There you go. Okay. So let's dig into the why of it all. First being your why. So why are you giving the talk in the first place? The thing I like to think about is, why is this important in general, but also why is this important to me? This is really where your passion is going to come out. And when we're passionate about something, people are going to feel that. And at the end of the day, people remember how you make them feel. They might remember some of the information you share, but if you make them feel something, if you make them feel connected, then they're really going to remember what you shared in your talk. So if you don't know your why or why it's important, then your audience is definitely not going to know either. When you're thinking about your topic, like as soon as you have the idea, you want to start to break down, why is this important to me? Why is this important for other people to know? And then the next thing is, what do you want them to remember? Like, especially at ProductCamp or any kind of conference, people are going to be going to talk after talk, panels, workshops. So at the end of the day, we all have information overload. And you really want to think about, what is the one thing that you want them to remember about your talk? Even if it's just one silly slide that they remember, but think about, what is the one takeaway that you want them to walk away with? So let's get into our, who are you talking to? This is all about knowing your audience. Can you guys still see my screen, or did the presentation? There we go. Okay. So like I mentioned, you want to think about who's going to be in the room. And with ProductCamp, it's kind of hard to predict. Like, you have a general idea of job titles or types of people that could be in the room. Maybe you have friends in the room, so you really know them. But it's a little more of a gamble. But you want to think about, what do they care about? So I think There's a big difference in going to a business stakeholder where maybe I'm trying to convince them that this research is very important, or if I'm trying to talk to engineers about, hey, we heard this feedback from users and this is why we need to make changes. Like, what are they bringing to the table and how am I going to connect my why, what's important, to their needs too? Why are they at your talk? Again, is it like, did they voluntarily choose to come and listen to you? Are they already interested, or are they honestly forced to be there? Do they have to show up? That's going to change the energy that they bring into the room and how open they are to what you have to say. How much do they already know about your topic? Are you talking to a room full of people who have never heard about it before, or do you have a bunch of experts? So you're already at a level playing field. And then, like I said just a minute ago, are they invested or do you have to make them care? And this might be on a scale. So some people might already have some investment, but maybe they don't care as much as they should. And like with research, that's always true, right? They're like, oh, yeah, we care about the data, but also I only want to pay 5 people. I like, no, we have to make it make sense, right? So there could be a certain level of investment, but you have to think about how are you going to make them care about this even half as much as you do. And that kind of gets to this last part. Why should it matter to them? This is really the so what, that aha moment that you want your audience to have. So it's one thing to know that something is important, right? Like we could talk about knowing the pros and cons of AI, right? Like we could talk about AI all day. We know it's important, it's inevitable, it's here, but what is the connection to each person in the audience? How does it impact their work, their product, even their life? And why should they actually care? So you want to be able to answer those questions and then incorporate that into your talk. And this is where you have to like spoon feed people, right? When we're really passionate or knowledgeable about something, it seems very obvious to us, but this could be somebody's first time hearing it. And so it's just better to spell it out for them and then remind them and remind them again. And maybe just a third or fourth time to be absolutely certain so that it's tattooed in their mind, that main takeaway. So that is the bones. That's your foundation, your why, your who, and your so what. But I think the biggest question is always, how do you keep people from falling asleep or getting distracted? Maybe you're asking for a friend. And so let's talk about this. This is where we really incorporate storytelling, and we're not talking about bedtime stories. But when we think about like novels, TV shows, films, even TikToks, they're entertaining because they're taking us on this journey, beginning, middle, and end. So when you incorporate storytelling into your talk, you get to take them on a journey with you. It makes it more interesting and engaging. And you can keep it really simple, right? You want to think about setting your stage. So this is their introduction, your introduction. How do you want it to start? You want to make sure that everybody is on the same level, like same playing field. Build that context first, introduce your why, your topic, your main takeaway here. And then you're going to start to build your peak, right? So this is that big moment. But to get there, you have to think about what is all of the information that they need to have that moment. And that's that rise that you see in the story. And then you want to bring it home. So after we've given away this big moment, how do you want them to feel at the end? It comes back to how is it going to connect with each person in your audience? That's so what, the lesson that they can take with them. And that's a really basic level of, hey, this is storytelling and how to incorporate it into your talk. But what I would say the biggest thing is, again, people remember how you make them feel. So this is really where you get to sprinkle in you, which I know can be like, ooh, jump scare. I have to like be vulnerable and show personality. But that is what is going to make this memorable. It makes it authentic. It just adds that like genuine connection. Again, it comes back to your passion, and that's what people are going to remember. So don't be afraid to lean into humor, right? Like I was talking to Sam and Toby and Jason at the beginning. I was just going to start this by saying, and actually we're going to talk about how to do stand-up comedy. for how to give your talk, because we all connect to laughing, right? Like we all like to laugh and smile and have fun. And I think when we get into some heavy topics, that lightness makes it easier to digest, right? Using metaphors, connecting it to everyday things makes it easier for your audience to understand and make their own personal connections. So, whatever that looks like for you, don't forget to add yourself into the talk. And then this is some basic presentation design do's and don'ts, because I think we've all seen some pretty horrific slide decks, especially in corporate. So 3 do's that I always recommend: add images. Only put key information on the page, because people are going to look at whatever you're displaying. And if there's too much content on the screen, they're not going to hear what's coming out of your mouth. So you want whatever information is on the screen to support and just add to what you're saying. And then please always check your contrast. And just when in doubt, just black and white. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the best contrast. You never know, especially at conferences with the projectors, what different colors are going to look like, because it can be very different than how it's showing up on your screen. Some don'ts: please don't use a lot of text to get your point across when you could have just used like 3 words, right? Again, that's like the big wall of text. And now people are just reading your slides and they're not listening to you. Don't have poor contrast, and don't use really small fonts. So yeah, those are just like very basic things. I love slide like design, so I have lots of fun. I would always encourage, just tap into your creativity. And if it's not your thing, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you know somebody who is good at it or enjoys it, lean on them. Go to Canva. There's tons of templates too. So I just spewed a whole lot of information. Do you guys have questions before we get into the activity? It's okay if you don't. Oh, I see that you came unmuted, but I cannot hear you. I'm so sorry.
If you put your question in the chat, we can read it out loud too, if you're having trouble with audio.
I see the question about sharing the deck. I'm very happy to share the deck after too. Yes. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, the activity is that we're going to go one by one, and you all are going to just give a no, I'm just playing. I'm not going to make you guys give a lightning talk. That would be so cruel. But we are going to build your skeleton. So if you have a topic from the last workshop, great. If you don't, doesn't even have to be related to work. You can pick a topic on anything. Maybe it's how to make your favorite coffee. But I just want to encourage you to make the bad presentation first, right? Like, you don't have to spit out this perfect slide deck story the first time. We can refine and edit. So if you have paper and pen, if that's your preference, if you want to open a note on your computer, do that, but you will need to be writing things down. So we are going to start with the bones. So that is, again, your why, your who, and your so what. So I want you to think about why your topic is important. You can just do bullet points, right? And again, like, what is the connection to you? Really think about why you're passionate about it. And then think about who is going to be in your audience. So jot down different job titles, maybe different levels of expertise you should be thinking about, levels of interest. And when in doubt, just assume that nobody knows anything and that they don't care at all, because you're going to have people like that in the room. Like, an ideal world, people would already know, they would be so invested, but that's just not how it is. And then last is your so what. So why does it matter to the people that are going to be showing up in the room? And I will give you guys a couple minutes to do that. Jason, our DJ, can you play some very inspiring music?
How's that?
It's perfect. Okay, take like maybe 30 more seconds. And then I'm going to move us to the next stage. And remember, you can always come back to this later. Okay. So hopefully you have at least some of your bones, even if it's not all of them. The next thing that we're going to do is focus on your story arc. So this is where we start to incorporate those storytelling elements. And this is really the way that I think about it, building it around that so what. So the first thing to start about is how you want to set the stage. Where do you want your audience to start? You're going to start with a cliffhanger, some suspense? Are you going to kick it off with comedy? You really get to pick. But think about your opening moment. And again, like, how do you want people to feel from the beginning? Then you want to think about what is the information they need to get to the peak. So that's going to be where you introduce your biggest one thing key takeaway. What are those moments that you need to get your audience there? And then how do you want them to feel at the end? And that can be as simple as one word adjective right now of how you want them to feel. But yeah, start to think about your story arc here. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. And then there's just one last thing. Okay, write down your last thought right now. I'm going to give you your last task, which shouldn't be too hard. The last thing is dressing it up. This is where we put that lipstick on. So this is where you are going to start to insert you into the story arc. So I want you to think about, like, where can you add anecdotes or those lighter moments, your dad jokes or your memes? And just at the end of the day, remember, we're all just humans floating around on a rock in this universe. So it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. I'll give you guys like a minute to do that now because I don't want to take away too much time from our other presenters. Okay. I know you're probably like, that was not enough time. I still have so many things I want to write down, and that's okay. I want to have a moment of transparency and to show you this is where my talk today started. It's just a simple note on my computer with big dreams. So if your outline, your skeleton is looking something like this, if it's messier than this, great, because it can evolve and grow. So thank you guys so much for listening to me talk about giving talks today. If you have questions later on before Product Camp, if you want to have other discussions, please email me. My email is there. I will drop a link to the presentation in the chat and make sure that Jason and Sam have the link as well to send out an email with the recording later. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe, for this amazing meta talk about how to work on your talk. Hopefully that gives people a great starting point and that it feels a little less intimidating to get started putting together your ideas. Love it. Cool. So our next speaker is Toby Johnson. Toby's going to talk to us about a different type of session, which is a panel, how to bring different voices together and get a good discussion going. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Toby.
Awesome. Zoe, big props. That was fantastic. I don't have any slides. Y'all get to just see my beautiful face. I feel like my hair looks really good today, so you just get to enjoy that. So yeah, we're just gonna talk. I did not do the meta thing. We're not gonna have a panel about panels, so it's just gonna be me talking for 15 minutes. But spoilers, I'm gonna tell you what I told you later. At the end, I really want to hear about what panels y'all are thinking about or might want to do for Product Camp. So you've got 15 minutes to start thinking about that. I won't jump in on you. But first, let's talk about the structure of a good panel. So time boxing is really important for panels. You can easily get off the trail, off track, off the rails, rabbit hole, all those things. So the facilitation aspect is really important. For example, I've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to give myself 15 minutes. I'm going to try not to go over. I'm going to break that up into a few discrete sections with some transitions. So the first part is you got to think about the goal. What is the goal of this panel? You want to start with a powerful statement. A panel is not just a Q&A session, it is a dynamic conversation. Your goal, your job as a moderator is to be a skilled host, a storyteller, and a conductor, right? You've got the train, you've got the orchestra, you've got the audience. You're responsible for the flow and the energy of that entire session. You really need to make sure that you have a clear goal in the beginning. If you're just having a panel to talk about something, it might be interesting. You might luck into a hot take or an interesting bit of discourse, but ultimately you should be trying to drive toward a goal. And the panelists that are on your panel are a really important part of that. So you need to think about the what and the who. That's the next really section. So we're talking about the planning phase now. You've got your goal. Okay, now you got to start planning that panel. This can work for a 30-minute panel, a 60-minute panel, even a 90-minute panel or longer. The longer the panel is, it's easier to lose that core focus and forget that goal. So pick a narrow topic. Don't be general. Let's talk about the future of marketing. Try to choose something like the role of influencers in B2B marketing, from brand awareness to ROI, right? So you've got very specific audience there. People know what they're getting when they come to that talk. You also want to make sure that you stay on that topic. So if you're talking about B2B marketing, bringing in like a whole bunch of consumer thought processes in terms of experts or discussion topics, it's not really going to be helpful. So make sure you have that specific focus, and that's going to help you attract the right audience and attract the right panelists. It allows for a deeper, more valuable discussion, and it can fill even a longer time slot. So don't worry about too narrow of a topic being a limitation on your time. Longer does not mean more general. In fact, if anything, with longer, you can get into the finer points of a topic. So keep it specific. You also need to curate your panelists. So once you've decided that your topic is the role of influencers in B2B marketing from brand awareness to ROI, who's the right group to have that discussion? You want to choose a diversity of roles and backgrounds. You don't want three people who have the same exact resume. It's probably going to be a very boring discussion. You want to have somebody who maybe has done B2B marketing for a long time, who has a long history of different companies, different types of products, things like that. Maybe you want somebody who's more of a thought leader, who does a bit less of the work, but more of the construction of ideas. So you got to ask yourself, who is a good communicator? I spent a lot of time in academia. I have been to so many panel discussions that are drier than dirt because they pick people who are really smart. They pick people who are experts in their area, but those people were not good communicators. So if you're going to have an interesting and engaging panel where people are not falling asleep in the back row 15 minutes in, you've got to make sure that you have good communicators on your panel. You got to ask yourself, do they tell compelling stories? Do they listen to others? Are they willing to disagree respectfully? For a longer panel, you might have a larger group, 3 to 5 people, versus just having a couple of people for a shorter panel. Make sure the dynamic between them is even more crucial. So if you're going to have a larger group of panelists, make sure that diversity is even more spread out. Okay, so you've got what are we talking about, and we've got who are we talking about it with. So now you need to think about the questions. So think of your panel as a 3-act play. The rule of 3 is really important in storytelling. That's one of the first things they teach you if you're doing stand-up comedy or improv or even just stage plays. The rule of 3, it has a very deep psychological impact in the human brain. There's da da da. If you get those 2 beats, it feels like there's some unresolvedness there. If you get to 4, maybe it adds a bit too much watering. So think of a 3-act play. There's that beginning, middle, and end. So Act 1, say we're doing a 60-minute panel. Act 1, probably about the first 10 minutes. That's the foundation. So you're going to start with introductory warm-up questions that establish each panelist's expertise and set the stage. You want the audience to know who is talking on this panel and why are they there. So you got the first 10 minutes. The meat of it, Act 2, is really in the middle. It's the conflict and the conversation. Conflict isn't bad. How we handle conflict determines whether it's enjoyable or unpleasant. But you want to create some healthy conflict there. If everyone's just saying, oh, I agree, it's not very interesting. You actually want to get some diversity of opinions so that you can get people who push back. That drama, even lowercase d drama, is really interesting in a panel. So this is the core. This is the most thought-provoking hot take questions. You should be encouraging your panelists to respond to each other directly. So as the facilitator, you can use phrases like, that's a great point, Jane. Bob, I know you've seen this from a different perspective. How does what Jane said resonate with your experience? So you can help facilitate those transactions, especially if you see things starting to wane or people getting distracted or losing focus, either on the panel or in the audience. So you've got your hot take questions, you've got your back and forth. Maybe there was some healthy disagreement. Ideally, you found a resolution, you found a compromise in between there. And so now you've got the conclusion. So now you've got the interest, right? The drama's happened. You want to pivot to big picture, forward-looking questions. Think about key takeaways, predictions, calls to action. So what we heard today was the future of B2B marketing is actually shifting to a more consumer mindset. People care less about brand awareness in commercials and they care more about social influencing. And so it seems like the panelists are talking about pivoting more of your marketing spend into social for a higher ROI. Maybe that's one of the key takeaways there. You can have a prediction of, oh, I think in the next 5 years, 80% of marketing spend is going to be through social, things like that. Or even a call to action. The future of B2B marketing is at stake. We have to do something now to preserve it, whatever it is. So you want to summarize, and this is really one of the most important parts of hosting the panel, is because you should have been listening and engaged the whole time, and you should be sussing out these themes. Feel free to write things down. You don't have to keep it all up in your head. I know I lose things very quickly out of my head. I'm sure other people do as well. So feel free to write those important takeaways down so that you don't forget them for this conclusion section. So that's like the last 15 minutes. One of the really important tips here when you're thinking about the questions is don't just do the round robin. I think it's too easy. I think it's a bit played out personally. No offense meant to anyone who's ever done a round robin on a panel, but I think that it's a really easy way to lose interest. You tend to get a lot of similar context from people. Even if you've built that diversity into the panelists, you can get a lot of people who do that. I agree. I'm just going to jump on that. I'm going to piggyback on that person. Figure out how to direct that question. Figure out who is the right person to answer that question, right? If you've put the right amount of planning and preparation time into your panelists, you should know what their backgrounds are. You should know roughly how you think they might, or who's going to have the hottest take on this thing. And also, don't be afraid to do the Jerry Springer thing and pit two people against each other. Hey, Sonia, I noticed that you mentioned this before, but I just heard from Jason that he thinks otherwise. Go for it. What do you guys think? Being able to have that really pointed dialogue and facilitating it, masterminding it a little bit, I think that's actually really important. Okay, so we've talked about who and what and how to construct the 3-act play. Before the panel, you need to build trust. So this is the most important pre-work. Everything else is about facilitation and architecting, but the trust is really important. If you stick a whole bunch of people on a panel who've never met and try to get them to have conflict in a public setting, you're probably going to get a whole lot of people who are uncomfortable and probably don't say out loud what they think, right? They're going to be more politically conservative, diplomatic, things like that. So host a pre-panel call. Get just 15 minutes with all your panelists. Share with them your plan. Share with them that you're going to be trying to pulling out some of these hot takes, these little bit of spice, maybe 2 or 3 chili peppers spice. Make sure that they are comfortable with it. Make sure that they are on board with it actively, not just passively. So create a psychological contract. Your goal is to make the panelists feel safe and to be vulnerable and take risks. You should tell them explicitly, my job is to make you look good. Don't worry about saying something controversial. My role is to help you frame it and keep the conversation productive. Your role is to be honest and share your real perspective. I'm never going to leave you hanging. And so letting them know that you're going to provide that support can really help people feel more comfortable. So now they know who else they're talking to. You've got that little 15-minute mixer pre-call, and you've let them know that you're going to be that safety blanket, that security net, safety, that you're going to be there to catch them if things get a little heated. So now we are in the panel. The panel is happening. Your role as the moderator is about facilitation. So there's 3 really important things you need to do. Listen more, talk less. You're the guide, you're not the star. The primary tool is not your voice, but your ears. You need to listen for threads that you can pull on, contradictions that you can explore, opportunities to connect what one person said to another person on that panel. But you are not there as a panelist, you are there as a moderator, as a facilitator. And so keep that role in mind. It's not your time for the spotlight. It's your time to give everyone else the spotlight. Number 2, gently wield the hook. You need to be ready to interject if a panelist is rambling. A great way to do this is to jump on a specific point that they just made. Wow, that is a powerful point about data security. I want to make sure we have time to hear what Carlos thinks about that. You can do that in a respectful way. It's not going to cause conflict, but we've all been on those or listened to those panels where someone gives an entire life story or diatribe about an experience or something like that. So you need to be able to facilitate the handoff and the exchange of the microphone, either literally or metaphorically. Number 3, manage the dynamics. Your job is to ensure that every voice is heard. If one person ends up dominating the entire panel, try to redirect a question to a quieter panelist, right? You brought them onto this panel because they have experience and ideas that are interesting and deserve to be heard. Don't let the extrovert kind of override the introvert. If a conversation is getting heated, you start to get that contention. Maybe it's a capital D drama now. You've got someone with very strong emotional opinions. Step in to clarify or reframe the discussion and de-escalate. And finally, close it all up, which I'm about to do right now. And then I want to hear everyone's panel ideas. Final summary. Just before you open up to the audience, take about half a minute to summarize the core themes of the discussion. This grounds the audience and helps them form their own questions. Open the floor to the audience. Transition to audience questions with an engaging prompt. Instead of, any questions? Try, what's a challenge you're facing in your own work that you think this group could offer a perspective on? It's prompting them. It's helping people avoid the blank page problem. You're much more likely to inspire somebody who's been actively thinking about this or trying to apply it to their own life than just opening up the floor and say, thanks, any questions? So that's it. That's the framework for the 15-minute presentation. You've got starting with the goal, then you've got the planning phase, the what and the who. You've got the questions, you're building trust, your moderator's role in the moment, and then the close and the Q&A. You can apply this to 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60, 90, 120, right? The world is your oyster. But if you follow this outline, it should really help build a more in-depth panel that people walk away from with really good insights and a lot of passion. So now I want to open up to the audience. I warned y'all, you had about 15 minutes. I think I went maybe a couple minutes over. Yeah, about 15 minutes to think about what kind of panels do you want to run at Product Camp. So feel free to jump off mute, put it in the chat. What are you thinking about? What's something that's relevant to you? And maybe you want to pull in a couple of friends, or maybe even people that aren't friends yet.
I love Claire Vaux's podcast, How I AI. And I think a great panel would be 3 or 4 people just talking about the latest thing that they've tried and are doing and some of the experience they're running and getting success with or failures with. Don't waste your time doing this because I did it and it screwed up. So
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And for that one, you could pick people that are maybe more experienced with AI, right? People who may be even building. If you can grab a panelist from Meta or OpenAI or something like that, that would be incredible, right? Someone who's actually building these generative AI systems to talk about maybe a little bit peek behind the curtain. You could bring in somebody who's a bit more novice and just brand new to it, who is like asking questions to those panelists, and they're a foil for the audience, right? The audience in that case is probably also trying to figure out best practices and things like that. You could have somebody who maybe is an IT leader in their company who's responsible for governance of AI and making sure that people aren't just like putting proprietary information out into the model training data that can be scooped up later. And talking about how are they managing AI, right? You could have a lot of diversity in that panel with a lot of good discussions versus just having 3 people who are all using AI in the same way for about the same purposes with the same experience. You might still have some good discussion there, but creating more diversity in that panel and having thought-provoking questions like, when shouldn't you use AI? Or can you tell me about a time that you used AI and it had a horrible consequence or an amazing consequence? Something like that. Those could be really fun. What other ideas? Oh, I'm sorry, Snehal, I can't hear you. Nothing. I can see you. I can see your mouth moving. The Zoom settings.
Feel free to drop your comments in the chat and I'll read them out loud.
Thanks, Sam. One that I've thought about is, so like about 3 years ago, I joined a company that did integrated hardware and software, which is a bit niche in the tech space. So I've always wanted to have a panel about integrated hardware software solutions and the benefits thereof. And I think on that panel, I think it'd be really interesting to not just have 3 people who have built those kind of products before, but actually people from different sides. Like I want to have a PM that's like very hardware focused, like someone who their product is drills and saws and stuff that you buy at Home Depot, and then someone who's like all up in the cloud, AWS based SaaS, B2B or B2C product, something like that. And I would want to facilitate, how would you integrate those things together? How would you collaborate on a new business and have the panel be about like, oh, what are problems that might not be solved best by just hardware, just software, but actually an integrated hardware software solution? Because I think those are some untapped markets. Yeah, Sam said that she wants to see the panels with everyone's hottest takes, right? I think that's what like Jason, I remember on Product Coffee, I came on for a first cup about the whole, was it Gen AI dropped a whole database. because the guy was insulting it and didn't know how to use it. But that was a really fun panel because we had some very strong opinions there. And those opinions weren't all the same. Some people were like, "Oh man, this." I think I was more on the governance side of we really need to make sure that the tools we're using have controls in place to prevent users, help users from themselves. But other people were like, "Man, that guy was a dummy," and that was really fun because we had diversity of opinion. But at no point did it get contentious. At no point were the panelists at each other's throats or things like that. But it was really good discussion. All
Can
right,
you
so
hear me now?
there we go. Yes, you're back.
Oh,
What's your idea for a panel?
yeah, I was thinking about AI in fintech because financial world is a lot about cybersecurity and how they can secure the data. And people are doing a lot of inventions in the payment processing, trading, etc. So the panel with the fintech and how their world is evolving through AI.
Yeah. What kind of panelists would you pull for that?
There's some VP level in IT, the companies like Truist, Synovus, or Morgan Stanley. These companies are doing a lot of AI innovation in payment processing or trading or your fraud detection, etc. And AI is doing great. AI is helping these companies doing a lot of innovations in your day-to-day life, how you deal with the money. That would be a good discussion to bring to the product camp.
Yeah. I feel like that one could get tricky because nobody wants their bank account to read zero because an AI prompt went wrong. How would you construct questions for that panel that can get some of those hot takes, a little bit of spicy conversation? But if you're talking like VPs of fintech companies on your panel, how do you avoid that from being too vanilla?
The thing is about the data, right? For example, how they are handling the data and how they are handling. So, is your question specific? So, let me go back to your question again. So, is your question specific to what questions will you bring to those panel
Yeah.
regarding the how they are handling their data or how
Hmm.
they are handling the yeah, actually I attended couple of fintech panels and it was really great conversation. And since my background's in the fintech, so it was a great conversation on what problems they are solving with the AI and how they are still having problems within their organizations to use the AI, first of all.
Hmm.
And whatever they are doing with AI, they have to do ton of testing of their models to make sure that whatever the model is ultimately bringing as an outcome is fruitful to the company as well as the customers of the that fintech related products.
Yeah.
So
I feel like this is one where you could really get some fun, juicy stories about, hey, tell us about an application of AI in your company that went really badly. Hopefully not in
yeah.
production. I feel like you get some really interesting stories there, as long as you're able to build that psychological safety ahead of time so people are comfortable kind of sharing that and being vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah. And people, they are definitely able to share some of their perspectives, how they, of course, they don't, they are very careful about what they are sharing, but they were very open to discuss. So few of the panels that I attended, they were very open to, because all the audience was fintech and it was mix of fintech, healthcare, and etc. But the problems are similar because in healthcare you have HIPAA and people have to very careful about the HIPAA. And
Mhm.
then same thing in the fintech that you have gap standards, stat standards, and you have various different standards, and you have to ISO standards, and you have to be very careful what your products are doing outside in the market.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I look forward to you pitching that at Product Camp.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to hand it back over to Sam, but thanks everyone for being a great audience.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Toby. Yeah, I hope that gives everyone some good ideas to think about in terms of what to consider when putting together a panel, and perhaps you have some people in mind that you might reach out to. Next. Cool. So the next topic that we're going to talk about is pitches, but we're 58. So let's go ahead and take 2 minutes to let everyone refill on coffee, and then we'll kick it off with Alex to talk about how to pitch your topic. Jason, would you put on some DJ music?
Oh.
Perfect. Thanks. All right, I hope everyone's feeling caffeinated and ready for the second half of our How to Put Together Your Product Camp sessions. Up next, we have Alex Sherman. He's another one of our award-winning past presenters at Product Camp. And he's going to talk to us about how to write a pitch and hopefully win enough votes to give your session. Over to you, Alex.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet some of you. Some familiar faces as well. I think the music's still going. Maybe. Cool. Thank you. You could leave it if you'd like. It's a good background. Hey, everyone. I'm Alex Sherman. Just like a quick little intro. Here's me at a product camp, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point, 2022. I don't like to say award winning, but my sessions have been selected in the past. Just a little bit of my background. I've been in product, call it like 16 years now, at a variety of different size organizations, ranging in size from startups to medium-sized businesses to enterprises. Currently, I'm head of product at an AI startup, like a lot of other people, helping companies move from like online to offline conversion. Happy to chat about that more another time. Can y'all see my slides? Let me ask you that.
For some reason, they are not showing up in my control panel. I can see them on the screen, though.
Okay. Other folks, maybe a thumbs up that you can see it. Sweet. All right, cool. I'll keep going. Thanks, Jason. Okay, cool. So I'll say this. I've been involved with Product Camp and attending them since 2011, and it's been a lot of fun. I didn't pitch my first session until 2015. I want to give a big thank you to Jason Brett on here for really helping me do that. He simply said one day, everybody's got something to share. And I really believe in that. And so I finally had something to share based on a team that I worked with. And I put together a blog post and turned it into a session. And it was called Lean Design Thinking. And it was a really special time in my career when I really got to collaborate with other disciplines. And I was really passionate about it. And that session was picked as a session for, I think, back in 2015. And then since then, I've been trying to do a session almost every one of those, except for a few that I missed for COVID. And I think I missed 23 and 24. But I'm definitely going this year. Sam and I are actually planning a session, and we're excited about that. All that to say, I've messed up a lot. And I'm happy to share with you some things and tips and tricks that I use to come up with a pitch. It'll be quick. I just have a few things here. For me, I try to keep it simple. I try not to overthink it. There was a time in my life where I would write out everything I would want to speak about, even in presentations. And I have since gotten away from that. And so I try to keep it very simple. So I don't know if this might be a little hard to see, but I always start with sometimes a question in that pitch. So often engaging the audience in that session, you only have 30 seconds, right? Otherwise, you're going to hear that air horn from Jason or whoever's navigating the air horn, but try to get them involved, get them to raise their hands, get them to answer in some way. And so some of this could be very broad questions that you know that they'll be able to answer or not with a yay or a nay or a hand raise. I found that to be pretty helpful. Most of my pitches have involved something along those lines. This first one at the top was like, how many of you want to create products that people love to use? And that was, I remember my first pitch, because that was like the essence of what I was trying to solve for in my first session that I ever put together. And so I was like, I'll start with that question and let's see how that goes. And that seemed to work well. That session did get picked. Another one here is, I say this often, and it worked in a session I've done in the past, which is, have you ever felt the feeling of, I hope this works? So getting them and the audience to relate to feelings that maybe you've had that you're going to speak to in your session goes a long way as well, getting people to nod along to it. So I think it's a really good way to kick something off. Another way is at the end of this, at the end of your pitch, or this is your pitch. And this was, I think, my straight up pitch from 2022 that did get selected. I was doing a session on just user story mapping, which is like a really simple, fun activity that I did with the whole crowd. It was a lot of fun. I think this was my pitch. I said, in this session, we'll cover how a user story map helps teams visualize, align, and refine on what to focus on. And that's all I did. That's all I said. And it was selected. And so I think whether you're combining the two, the question and the statement together, or just using one of those to be able to get people's attention, it goes a long way. So what I'm trying to get to is, what is it that I want people to walk away from? How am I going to distill this? And how can I articulate that to the audience? And so I really try not to overthink it. I think I've observed people who have kind of these like very long paragraphs of setting the stage, and I think that's fine. Sometimes people can get lost in those kind of long stories. Not to say you shouldn't tell a story in your pitch, but don't get lost in it is what I'm trying to say. Okay, great. So breaking it down, here are the things, if I was like to distill it down, is like, one, start with an opening hook, a question, a problem, or a stat of some sort that really gets people interested. Two, end with the takeaway. What are they going to get out of this? And what's that simple statement that represents it? So that's my format. Let's call it my hack on how I come up with pitches. I really try not to overthink it. Otherwise, I'll just get in my head and I'll mess it up, which is, we're humans. We do that. Cool. Let's do a little quick workshop. I'm going to make y'all do a little bit of work here. Sound good? So I don't want to assume that everybody has a session yet. And so let's start with a scenario. If you do have a session, you can play along and apply this. So let's pretend like the scenario is that you have a session sharing on how you use AI as a product manager on a daily basis. Cool? Everybody with me on that? Try to give one set of directions at a time because we're adults and we're really bad at like multiple sets of directions. All right, cool. I'm assuming yes. Great. Here's the thing I want you to do is write a question or opening statement for that type of session. I'll give you about a minute. You can do it. You can type it out here in the chat if you'd like, or you can just write it on a piece of paper. But I want to give you, let's call it like 2 minutes to think about this. I'll set a timer. Or Jason, if you got it, oh, perfect. So good with that. Give you a couple minutes. Again,
So do we have
scenario.
to do on the same topic here as a product manager?
No, I was just saying you can do it. This is if you don't have a session topic, you can play off of and riff off of this scenario. If you've got your own, feel free to riff off of your own session topic. Okay, Thank you for clarifying. So again, feel free to throw it in the chat or just write it down. Okay, yeah, I like the indication that we're done. Cool. All right, hey, I see a few chats in here. I appreciate that. Thank you all for doing that. Does anybody want to share maybe something that's not in this chat that they wrote down?
People are scared today.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm also comfortable with silence. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I can share my question.
Please.
Okay. How would you feel when you send money securely and timely to your son or daughter who is doing study abroad?
What was that first part? Can you repeat it one more time, please?
How do you feel when you send money securely and timely to your son or daughter who is studying abroad?
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a question that kind of opens up a potential problem that people may have, right? Love it. Cool. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I'll pick at some of these. Sam, I see you added one in here. So do you worry that you're falling behind with learning how to use AI at work? Yeah, that's great. Straight to the point, and it plays on maybe some people's fears and realities, right? I feel that. I'll just be very open. That's always a feeling. How many of you want to use, I guess it's from, it could be from Jason or somebody else that's with Jason. Sansbury. Hello, Sansbury's, some of my favorite people in the world, by the way. How many of you want to use AI to help make your job easier and not just to check the box that everything needs AI? These are awesome, like super straight to the point, gets to the essence of what it's trying to do and hits on maybe some people's emotions as well. I think there's one more in here that I'm seeing from Sue. So Sue, I'll just read yours. It looks like, oh, some messages are coming in. AI is changing so rapidly. How do we reconcile what to use for consistency throughout the organization? Oh, I love it. It's so good. Cool. And then I see one from Sehal. How do you feel when a stock lands in your brokerage account at the market price you set? Yeah. Invoking on emotions is really helpful. I'm sure there's some great studies on psychology that support that. I don't have them and can't reference it, but there's something there for sure. Okay, great. All right, I have one more activity here as a part of this. So I'm sharing my screen. So the next prompt here that I have for you all is to write a clear takeaway. So give this a try for either the scenario you've got here, that we've got here, or for your session. So like Sue and Snehal, feel free to attribute it to the ones that y'all are thinking about. So write a clear takeaway. What would that takeaway look like? What do you want to leave people with so that they think about maybe attending your session or voting for your session or want to learn more about your session? So I'll give you a minute and a half this time.
I didn't have that button pre-made.
It still works. It's perfect. I probably should have given more than a minute and a half, so it worked out, Jason. You're good. And again, feel free to write this in the chat, in the meeting chat, or just write it on your own. Okay. All right. I see less engagement this time. That's okay. Does anybody want to share maybe something that they wrote that's not in our chat messages here? Our meeting chat? So a simple takeaway. All right. I see Sam wrote it in one. Thank you, Sam. So come try out some AI prompts and tools that will save you at least an hour next week. Yeah. It's like straight to the point. Here's what you're going to walk away with. So people at least have an understanding, right? You open it up with a question or a statement that's enticing and invokes some emotion, maybe some feelings that they have. And you end it with, here's what you're going to walk away with. Because we only have 40 minutes in these sessions. And I think it's important to do that. Okay, great.
Can
Oh, I
I
see another one.
can
Go
I
ahead,
read
please.
mine? And I may not, I'm not fully satisfied with mine, but I'll just say
That's
it.
okay.
In this session, you will learn how you can utilize your data, ERP, and AI for digital transformation in your organization. Come hang out and learn about how to revolutionize and grow with the potential of data, ERP, and AI.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point, right? I think what you're hitting on is what they're going to get out of this, why they need it, and the specifics about it. I love it.
Was
And
it
there's a cadence.
wordy?
Go ahead. I think it sounded like the second sentence was a repeat of the first, would be my feedback, if you're open
Okay.
to it. Yeah, I think try to keep it to one sentence is what I've observed works well for some individuals. And there's like a cadence to this, right? I don't know what the right cadence is, but how you deliver the cadence and give a moment for some of that in between really
Right.
goes a long way. There's a power to the pause in how we
Mhm.
speak. I think that works well.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah, thank you for sharing. Cool. I see, Stephen, you added one here. In this session, we'll discuss diplomatic strategies to gain leadership's trust in an organization where trust has been lost. Oh, it's great. Because we know that happens a lot. We're very human.
Asking
People
for
are weird about trust. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just said asking for a friend.
Feels like the truth to me. Nice. Okay. So that's it. That was it. It was like my main thing here was to share with y'all that try not to overthink this. I was going to put together a prompt for you all to use, but you can figure out how to do that on your own. I wanted you all to think about it and see the structure and the thought about it. You can certainly use AI to help tweak. I think that's a wonderful thing, but this is a starting point. It's worked for me. I hope it works for you all. What questions do you all have?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on, say you've done your prep and you've got your pitch ready to go, but you're shaking and nervous when it's time to go? Do you have any tips about that?
Yeah, I still get nervous. I still get the butterflies. I have gotten better about the shaking. I used to move my right leg a lot when I spoke until somebody pointed that out. I stopped. Anyways, all that to say, I believe I heard this. I can't quote the person, it was from a book, but it was like turn those butterflies into focus. And that's helped me, right? It's like, how can we use this nervous energy into something positive? And so I think that mindset has really helped me. The other thing is just little quick breathing techniques, if you can remember. Do the box breathing just before you go on, I think is helpful as well. I see, is it Merrick in here saying recording yourself doing the presentation to watch? Yeah, I think that's super helpful, right? That gets you comfortable with it. You're giving yourself feedback at that point in a way as well. There's something super powerful about that. Great question, Sam. What else? What other questions do you have?
Alex, what's the best one that you've done and what's the worst one that you've done?
To me, they're all the worst. That might be self-critical. I think, I don't know how to describe like the best. I'll say the easiest one I did, where a lot of people voted on it, was the one that I shared around story mapping. It was very straightforward, and that was all I said was like that sentence, and I think it was voted on for I forget what you call it, Jason, but the anchor session for the day, and it was just that sentence. Keynote, thank you. Yeah, it became the keynote, and it was just that sentence. It was super straightforward. So it sounds like maybe that was the best based on feedback from the audience. And then my worst, there is a session that I had done 2 years in a row. The first year it was selected and won, and then the second year it didn't. And I don't remember what my pitch like the difference in my pitch was, other than that I did multiple session pitches, and maybe one was better than the other. And specifically, I think it was around experimentation in companies, and maybe the way I pitched it just didn't land with people. And that's okay. I'm sorry, I can't recall the specifics of it. Yeah. Good questions. Okay, I think that's it. Unless there's no more questions, I'm happy to pass it back over to you, Sam. Thank you all for listening to me talk for a little bit about this. Happy to jam with others in the future. Feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Cool. So I guess this rounds us out with our last topic, which is interactive workshops. So I guess I'm introducing myself. My name is Sam, and I think of myself not just as the product manager, but as a facilitator. And I love thinking about designing sessions in an interactive way. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. 1 second, let me share my screen. So I could nerd out about this all day long, but I've tried to distill it down to the simplest version of this as an entry point, especially if you've never tried to design something that's a little bit more interactive before. And I want to start by just saying, okay, what is the difference between a talk and a workshop? Any guesses? You can throw it in the chat or say it out loud.
Workshops are hands-on, and talk is it's basically a talk, but workshops are hands-on. You are actually doing the thing.
Lovely. Yeah, hands-on, you're doing the thing. I see a few more people talking in the chat saying interactive, do versus listen, collaboration, all of these things I agree with. I like to think of it as a talk is usually a story and a big idea, and a workshop is about applying skills. And so it's all about doing and practicing. Okay, so we're talking to mostly product managers, and I have good news for you, which is that the toolkit you have for doing product management is very similar to the toolkit for doing workshop design. So things like defining success, user personas, journey mapping, and thinking about UX components and flows all map very nicely over to the tools that you need to do workshop design. So success, we can call those learning objectives. User personas, I use learner personas for most of my workshops. Journey map, we can translate that into a skills map. And then our UX components or interaction points, we can think of those as our learning activities. So good news is you have all the things you need. You just need to apply a different lens to them. And if I were to just sketch out the simple version of how I break down workshops, I always start with the end in mind. I start with my learning objectives, and I create an after persona. So I put myself into the future and I say, when someone walks out of this workshop, what are they going to walk away with? What are they going to do differently? What is success going to look like? So I put my mind into the future and think about the end of the workshop. Then I time travel and think about the beginning of the workshop, and I try to understand the persona of who's walking in. So I call this the learner before persona. So who's walking in, what knowledge do they already have, what might they be struggling with, what are they hoping to learn and be able to do by the end of the workshop that they can't do at the beginning. So I start at the end, then I think about what they're coming in with, and then the rest of the workshop design is about creating this arc from the before to the after. And I like to think about this kind of like building a path of stepping stones, where each step of the way is taking us on this journey. That's pretty much it. That is the simplest version I can explain of how I think about workshop design. And so I'm going to go through each of these a little bit more in depth and give you a chance to actually sketch out an outline of a workshop as well. So I'll go back to the beginning, which is the after. And I think you'll probably notice there's a theme across all of the things we've talked about today, which is if you can start with your purpose and intention, it makes everything else easier. So my question here is, at the end of the workshop, what will your learner notice, say, do, or feel? And Jason, if we could put 2 minutes on the clock. If you have a topic that you've thought about, you're welcome to use that. If you want to borrow a practice topic, you can use the one that Alex suggested about product managers using AI in their day-to-day. One example I have is how to do generative user experience research. That's one I've done in the past that I can give examples for. So pick your topic and go ahead and try to answer these questions. All right, anyone want to share some of their examples? What are their learner after personas doing, thinking, feeling, noticing at the end of your workshop? All right, I see Alex says, I feel like I can get started on using AI on a regular basis. What else? Toby says, I am more confident about speaking in public.
I elaborated on my own example. Can I read that?
Sure.
At the end, they will notice what they are not doing correctly. They will take action on streamlining their processes, and they will feel confident about their initiatives.
Wonderful. Cool. All right, and I'll just throw in one more example. So if I were doing a session on user experience research, I might say at the end, they'll also feel more confident that they can do it more often. They'll include their stakeholders throughout the whole process, and they'll do more research more effectively. Cool. All right, so then we're going to time travel again and go to our before persona. So this is trying to understand who's walking in the room. So we'll go ahead and ask the question, when they arrive, what are they doing, saying, noticing, feeling, etc. And we'll go ahead and, Jason, if you don't mind putting another 2 minutes on the clock, I'll give folks a chance to think about that and jot down your notes. Lovely. Feel free to drop your notes in the chat or come off mute and share with the group. What are your learner before personas doing, saying, or feeling? So one example for the research topic would be that beforehand, they are not confident and therefore they are not doing very much research. Or maybe they are doing research and they're asking leading questions and not getting the right insights out of the research. They might also be surprising stakeholders with insights that the stakeholders didn't even know they were looking for. Anyone else have examples they'd like to share of their before persona? Yeah, it's Snehal.
Yeah, I can share mine with the example that I have. Data finance cloud transformations were already creating a lot of chaos. now need to innovate and incorporate AI on top of that is overwhelming to know the perfect North Star.
Yeah, beautiful. I love when people include these feeling words in the before and after, because being able to take someone from a feeling of overwhelm into feeling more confident can be a huge win, even if you're just working on a small skill. Lovely. Toby says they want to present more sessions at ProductCamp, but they stumble over their words and feel self-conscious. Anyone in this room feel that way? Yeah. Cool. All right, so then the next piece of this is to think about that arc from our before to our after. And what I try to think about here is how to break down that journey into different steps. So the goal here is usually for a ProductCamp session, since they're about 40 or 45 minutes, I think the max number of steps we want is 3. You could even break it down into 2. You can do 3 steps and try and keep each of the steps pretty small. And this is going to make the next piece of the design easier because you're scoping it down. So we'll go ahead and put another 2 minutes for folks to consider how to break down their journey from before to after. Aim for about 2 or 3 main stepping stones, and then we'll come back together in 2 minutes.
Does this question mean like how you would help that persona to get to where the destination is?
Exactly. Yeah. What are the milestones or checkpoints along the way from their before experience, trying to build a skill into the after?
Thank you.
All right. Would anyone like to share their checkpoints or stepping stones that they came up with? All right, I can kick us off with an example. So for the research topic, my stepping stones would be 1, can they create a simple research plan? 2, can they conduct an interview using story-based inquiry? So this is teaching people the difference between saying, would you go to the gym versus what was the last time that you did something active? Can you tell me about it? And then 3 would be, can they capture insights in a way that's shareable? Just as an example of how to break that down into 3 pieces of how to do generative research. Anyone else have some stepping stones or checkpoints that they would like to share? Yeah, go ahead.
So in my case, my product is like data, ERP, and AI. So if I were to go from there, so the skill map is finding the proper, doing the proper data assessment, then seeing what the systems are sitting in the silos, bring all the stakeholders on board, and then deciding the proper plan to build, test, and deploy. But there are a lot more within that. So I'm giving like a very high level view of what this could be.
Lovely. Yeah, this is usually the stage where I realize I have too much material and I cut down the scope. So it's nice to break it down because it helps you see how much depth you can offer, and if you want to keep it high level or if you want to get people into less breadth but more depth. Lovely. And then I see Toby put in the chat 1, breathing, 2, pacing, 3, preparation, and 4, self-affirmation. Love that. All right, and then the last piece of this is zooming in onto each of those stepping stones and thinking about how you're going to create interaction. My tips here, this is the creative part. I think this is the most fun part, is working on the actual activities. But if you're new to this, oftentimes what I will suggest is 1, creating context or a scenario, like for example, what Alex did with his. 2, creating a task that you're giving them that is constrained. So you don't want it to be too broad or people feel lost. You want to tighten it in and give them a constrained task. And another option to consider is templates. Can you give them some fill in the blanks to get them started and kickstart that process. These are just a few ideas. There are many things you can do. You can break people into different size groups. You can have them do something kinesthetic, like moving around the room. You can give them worksheets. There's so many different options here. So my suggestion for today is to pick one of your stepping stones and just brainstorm a couple of ideas of things that you might do to help people experience and actually try practicing that piece of the skill map. So we'll round it out with another 2 minutes. Jason, if you don't mind giving us another timer.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. What exactly are we doing with the UX component?
Oh, forgot my here. Yeah, so basically we're looking at one of our stepping stones from our map and thinking about how we might invite interaction for someone to try practicing this skill or sub-skill.
Okay.
All right. So I'll give one example here for the research topic. One activity I invited people to do in this workshop was actually practicing a mock interview. So I asked people if they would get into groups of 3 or 4, 3 ideally, and it was a 15-minute activity. Each person had 5 minutes to practice, of which they would say about 3 to 4 minutes of practicing with someone else being a pretend participant in the research session and the third person observing, with a minute of feedback at the after their practice round for the other participants to say, oh, you did this well, or oh, I noticed you asked a leading question there. Maybe you could rephrase it this way. And these types of activities where people are in small groups practicing things like that, I honestly think are so fun because the room typically is buzzing with energy. And there's lots of different ways to do it. So what were some of the other ideas that you all had for your interaction or UX component focused on one sub-skill? I see Toby wrote preparation, write out your script, practice it again, practice it in front of someone, get feedback, incorporate feedback, practice it again. Yeah, lots of doing. Wonderful. Snehal, go ahead.
Yeah, basically meet in the groups and then jot down as many as the problems you're facing and then group them with the categories, and so that what categories having the issues and tackle them as per how your findings are.
Wonderful. Yeah. Getting people to connect with each other and learn together. Beautiful. All right. That is pretty much the process I go through when I'm thinking about workshops. I personally love doing workshops. I think it can be a great way for people to not only learn from the presenter, but to learn from each other and make connections, which honestly is oftentimes one of the big things people want out of a conference like this, is to get to know not just the presenters, but each other. So I love doing this type of interaction and bringing other people's voices into the room and letting people try things out that hopefully they can then put into use next Monday when they go back to work. So that's usually what I'm thinking when I'm presenting these two is, are they going to be prepped with something to go try out in real life after they've tried it in this container?